What's up, everybody? It's your boy Tru Element 78 in the building with.
Your one and only reigning and defending Mondo Lucha Hall of Famer, the X-Man, Xavier Mustafa.
And today is Sunday, March 8th, 2020, and you are tuned into a special edition of Saturday Night Slamcasters. On today's episode, we are here to discuss the mid-season of the XFL. This was week 5 of the XFL, and to help us do that, we have two special guests on the podcast with us. One of them, who you guys should already be familiar with if you subscribe to our podcast or you listen to our week 1 review of the XFL. And then the other one, I'm going to allow him to introduce himself first.
I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm Jake Kocorowski from allbadgers.com, Sports Illustrated's channel, site dedicated to covering all things Wisconsin Badgers.
All right, and this is Scott Wisniewski. Been involved in sports media for quite some time. Do some podcasts that you can find from time to time as well, and of course, a ring announcer for Legacy Pro Wrestling, and I guess just overall kind of sports enthusiast.
All right, so those are the introductions there. So now you guys are familiar with who you're going to be listening to. So we're going to start things off just talking about the growth of the XFL from week 1 to week 5 and what we've seen from the players on the field and just the play in general. How do you guys like what you've been seeing? And I'll send that out to Scott and Jake first.
You know what? I still think, as I've said, when week 1, it's a better product than their first iteration. It's still not the NFL, but we don't expect it to be. But I still like the fact that it still resembles football. It does have a lot of weird scores because of the way the extra points are constructed. So you see some final scores that are not typically scores you'd see for a football game. But, it's been entertaining. There's one team that seems to be dominating as far as record-wise at 5-0, and really two teams, I think, that are the cream of the crop, and everybody else is kind of in a mix of from a talent side. I think it's Houston and St. Louis, and then really everybody else right now.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Scotty. Just watching some of these games, and even just I caught St. Louis and DC earlier today just for a little bit. I think the play has been it's been interesting. Like you mentioned, Scott, with Houston running away with it, and them running a run and shoot offense with June Jones, and you're seeing an emerging quarterback who. I've kind of grown, fond of watching each week and seeing what he can do and walk. And then, as a PJ Walker for the Roughnecks there. But it's also, I think the innovation is there. I enjoy, on the field stuff, you're seeing the kickoffs and you're seeing, that rule look really cool. The replays, watching from home and seeing the transparency between seemingly the sky judge and the referee. Even the fan interactions, I think, are growing. I think even from that week 1, from when you guys first talked about the XFL, you saw the home opener a couple weeks later against St. Louis, and you saw it basically be a sellout for what they had available for those seats. And St. Louis wants a NFL franchise after the Rams left, and so you saw a good outpouring there. There's the fan base, I think, will continue to grow more and more. Though, like you mentioned, Scott, the product isn't going to be the NFL. It's better than the AAF from last spring, by all means. By all means, it is. But and you're seeing, I think, different variations of offenses now. Some that are ground heavy, like the Tampa Bay Vipers, who right now they coughed up a lead to LA as we're recording. But it's all you're seeing different types of offenses, I think, which are good. Which, if you go back even to the old XFL, right? What if instead of running the old 70s styles offenses, let's say they start running the spread offenses back in the day, or the air raids that like Hal Mummy had back there? That could have changed the game, 20 some odd years ago. But I digress there. I think the product's getting better. I think in terms of just the play and whatnot, I think you're seeing one offense really excel. But Scott, I completely agree with you on that when it comes to just two teams that are looking good, but then you're also having like a bunch of the rest of them kind of fighting for jockeying for positions, but they have some noticeable flaws.
Yeah, I think St. Louis is more of a defensive team. Houston doesn't seem to play much defense, but they'll outscore you. Here's the one thing I'd say about the innovation, too. So we talked about this in week 1. I like the kickoff rule. I don't like the double pass rule. I don't mind the extra point changes. We're yet to see the overtime, or at least I'm yet to see the overtime format, and that's what intrigues me. I want to see how that works.
How that shoot off.
But to be fair, yeah. And to be fair, I just don't think some of these games have been. I think what's hurt them, and we'll get into some of the other media stuff in a minute, but there have been a lot of games that haven't been close. And I mean, you can't control that. I mean, that's not through any of their own doing. But I think if you'd see some close games and a couple games that would have gotten to overtime, you might see a little bit more of a buzz, I think, perhaps, from people who are still not committed to giving this product a chance.
Right. And it's been kind of interesting. I know week 1 they had a very big showing with over 3 million viewers. The viewership has been declining week after week, but now it's more in line with what you see from an NBA game on a Saturday or on a Sunday. Now, the one big worry for the XFL going forward, there's actually 2, are that they're going to have some head-to-head competition up against the Masters. They're going to be going head-to-head with that. Mm-hmm. And now with this whole COVID-19 thing that's going around and places are starting to not allow group gatherings and different things like that, do you see things like that really affecting the XFL going forward, especially the pandemic?
That could affect everything. I don't want to get into the whole overblown. I mean, I don't want to discredit coronavirus, but let's be honest. I think the panic that's been stirred up is a little bit crazy, but it's something that could happen. Absolutely. I mean, NBA is already talking about having a plan in place for them doing games in front of empty arenas. So that would certainly hurt them. Let's take that out of the equation, though. And I know that the ratings have declined from week 1 to now. But what I want to see is what the average age of the viewer is, because the NFL is starting to the point where they may pass baseball for having the oldest fan base. If the XFL's fan base, if their average age is somewhere around where the NBA's is, there could be a future for this league. If the average age is still people in their mid-40s and it's declining in ratings from week 1 to week 5, then I'd be a little bit more concerned. So I'd really like to see how they break the demographic out and see who's actually watching these games.
Yeah, the only breakdown I could find for the ages were from the second week of the XFL, and it was that they were the top 4 sporting event for viewers ages 18 to 49. So
that's good.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. Those are the people that marketers want to see watching shows. It's not like, and we mainly talk about wrestling over here, where WWE really rules that over 50 crowd. So to see them getting the 18 to 49 crowd, that's a good crowd and a good berth that you can grow from there.
Sure, but to go one further, Jake, and I mean, obviously from what we kind of get involved with, the NBA ratings are below football and baseball. But if you look at where they score well in an 18 to 24 demographic. And those are the people that are going to be the consumers in the next decade or so. So if you see that the XFL is actually striking a chord with people under 30, there's a chance that it could be successful.
All right. There was something else that I was going to bring up. Xavier, Mustafa, you got anything to add about the XFL?
I really don't have too much to add. Like, I'm not a big, huge football fan. I watch the games. The only thing I can really comment on that I really pay attention to is the production stuff, which I think is getting more and more polished as we go along. The graphics are great. Everybody's starting to feel comfortable with what they're doing, whereas, the first couple of weeks, everybody was still kind of, I guess, learning their place, if you will. But yeah, it's growing. I think it's going well.
Okay, well,
I noticed that the attendance is not attendance, but viewership is declining, but that should be expected.
Right. Well, I want to throw this out there, and this goes along with the viewership and what we were just talking about with the viewership declining. I think that one of the things the XFL really has to work on, and I don't even know if it's something that they can necessarily work on, because I don't know if it's a pay-to-play field or whatever the case may be, is that they have their games on ESPN, they have their games on ABC, they have their games on Fox, but you don't ever see any of these, I don't see our affiliate station here. Obviously, Wisconsin doesn't have an XFL team, but you don't really see them covering the scores of the league. You don't really see the pundits talking about the XFL and the games and the players, or
Right.
familiarizing their viewers with the players. You don't hear Shannon Sharp or Stephen A. Smith or any of them bringing up anything to do with
Right.
the XFL. And I feel to continue to be a legitimate league and to be able to grow their audience, that's something that they're going to need. And I don't know, like I said, I'm not in that realm, so I don't know if it's a pay to play thing, or is it just that, or the NFL has it so locked up that, hey, like, no competition.
That might be part of it, and you're hitting on some big points, because this is what bugs me. You got a 24/7 sports cycle on ESPN, and even on Fox Sports, but on ESPN, you have time on 7 back-to-back shows, have some story about LeBron and some story about how the Bucks aren't really contenders and all this other stuff, but you can't fit in 5 minutes to talk about a product that you promote and that you air. You can't find 5 minutes on SportsCenter to talk about upcoming games this week and talk about, hey, let's look at this weekend's games. You can't do that. You can't go on your app and get a box score for an XFL game. I can see the scores on my ESPN app. It's buried somewhere way down after women's basketball, but I can't get a box score.
Right.
I can't see stats.
Right.
I can't see anything that's going on in that game. To me, that's a neglectful on the broadcast partner's part, regardless of how important they think it is or how much money, or if it is pay to play. You're supposed to be promoting and being a broadcast partner, and to me, they've been derelict in their duties, and to me, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. But I expect nothing less from ESPN.
Right, and it's kind of funny, though, because when the AAF was around, they were getting a little bit of that coverage, but the XFL is getting no love, and they're on the big networks. The AAF was predominantly only on NBC, if I recall correctly. It had that one channel, but you would see highlights of their games and see discussion about their games. Honestly, if I'm Vince McMahon, they have that show over there on Fox Sports 1, that backstage they do for wrestling. I would get rid of that and just turn that into the XFL show, since nobody else wants to touch their product to discuss it and have pundits talking about what's been going on with the league.
Well, and the problem is the NFL, if you think about it, they have their clause in the ABC, because ESPN and ABC are owned by Disney. They have their clause in NBC, because NBC shows the Sunday night games. They have their clause in Fox, and they have their clause in CBS. It'd be nice if there was a fifth legitimate network platform that would actually give a crap about trying to promote this product, but there isn't really one. So you kind of have to make a deal with the devil and go, well, hey, Fox and Disney are some very powerful partners, but they're not really helping. They're not helping a product out, to be honest with you.
Now, it's one interesting thing about one thing. I mean, you have the way in terms of noting when they are on national TV. I think they're trying, based off, like, I'm looking right now on Twitter, and there's XFL on Fox. And one thing that people need to know too, with XFL, I mean, their social media right now, and I have to be on Twitter all the time just because of reporting, doing other things. So maybe I'm more in tune in this, but Twitter is such a small segment compared to what Facebook is even. And I'm looking at social media for Facebook right now, and the XFL currently sits at just over 202,000 likes right now, which is good, especially for a fledgling league, and growing more. I think it's one thing where, and I don't have the stats in front of me, obviously, but it's interesting to see just how much they're promoting the product, how much time they're devoting on ESPN. They're putting out these great graphics, like you mentioned, Xavier, where they have these abilities to, everything looks sharp for the telecast. I think, production-wise, it's looking good. But what are they doing for marketing? They're doing the right things on social media. Like I said, on Facebook, you're seeing them update every so often, doing video highlights, which people are liking. For those that are on Twitter, the social media memes are there, especially with the beer snake for DC right now, which has become a very popular thing. Social media, viral type video. But the thing is, though, too, how are they doing to? You guys mentioned it'd be interesting to see just what are they doing to promote it on these telecasts and whatnot. And even before, like in week 1, week 2, they were talking about the talent of the XFL, what was going right, what could be improved upon and built upon for the coming weeks ahead. So it will be interesting just to see just with agreements down the road and whatnot. I don't know what the contracts are, but it'll be interesting to see just how they can continue to build upon this league, which the talent's not going to be there like the NFL, where these guys are trying to find contracts to play at the next level, or they're not to the level of the NFL stars, I should say, because a lot of these guys have played in the NFL. Like I talked to Garrett Dooley, I talked to Darius Hillary from former Badgers that are participating in these leagues, and they've made a talent to be in the league. They've been on rosters or practice squads, so they are NFL talent. It's just, in terms of like top end talent, there is a talent discrepancy. Obviously, that's why they're not playing on Sundays. And this is a league that could get them back. A lot of these players have goals to get back to the league, so it does make me wonder about the talent in terms of how these networks view the talent there. So I think. It's gone well so far. I think there's a lot more to be done though too.
But here's the problem, and this is what's going to knock them out of the headlines. Okay, so we're at mid-season, almost mid-season for them, right? Well, what starts next week? NFL free agency. So do you think ESPN is going to give any time to the XFL, or is it going to be all their football coverage is going to be about NFL free agency? Then that dies down, and right around playoff time
Baseball.
For the XFL. Well, before that, if we talk about football. What comes up? The NFL draft. And what are they going to talk about? The NFL draft or the XFL playoffs? I think if there's going to be year 2, 3, and beyond, the XFL needs to beat the NFL to the punch, get some of their games, at least a good portion of them, on streaming services, and decide we don't want to compete with the same fan base. We want to compete with the younger viewer, the 18 to 35-year-old viewer, not the 18 to 49-year-old viewer. Let's do some stuff on streaming. Let's go harder on social media. Let's just try to market to a group that may have decided that they don't love the NFL like they used to anymore. Not that they won't watch it, but are looking for something different and maybe just try some different things. Because at some point, the NFL is going to have to do streaming service for some of their games to get their fan base to become younger, so to speak. Maybe the XFL has to beat them to the punch that way and go somewhere where they can kind of rule the roost. Because like I said, free agency starts in less than a week, and that's all that's going to dominate the football news on the major sports networks.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, I know that you guys addressed that you don't know what the contracts really look like, how long they're for. We do know that the players are allowed to accept NFL contracts if they are offered them. Mm-hmm. And I do think that the way that this league is set up, I think that there are a lot of players that's going to get some reps on that field that the NFL are going to be looking at, because you look at the speed of the XFL, it plays faster than the NFL. So if you can survive in the XFL per se and work with the shorter play clock and get out there on the field and do what you need to do, I think that it'll make you a more dynamic player going into the NFL, because they always say how fast the NFL moves and how much faster it plays in the NCAA. So I think that the players coming from the XFL could, depending on what they show on the field out there, could go over to the NFL and dominate if they really, improve their game from where they are now. Like you said, most of them are NFL caliber players. They just aren't. They just aren't to that degree where a team was ready to take them off the practice team per se.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with like one guy like PJ Walker, for example, like Pro Football Talk. They had there was something earlier this week talking about how, or this last week I should say, where the Seattle Seahawks were sending scouts to watch him. And so I think he's been one of the big breakout stars for the XFL. I thought Cardale Jones was like that as well at the beginning of the season, but that trailed off, and they had Tyree Jackson from Buffalo, the former Buffalo Bulls quarterback, who was amazing in his college career, take over for DC. And so, I mean, like I said, there's talent there, and they can go back and forth. I mean, one Badger, for that matter, Olive Sangapolu, who athletic defensive lineman, nose tackle, he was drafted, I forgot which round, I think it was 6th round by the Houston Roughnecks back in the fall. And next thing you know, he signs a futures contract, or he signed to the practice squad of the Detroit Lions. And so that, like you mentioned, they can jump to the next level. And even a guy like Darius, for that matter, for the Badgers, who, he's bounced from, he played one game according to NFL's .com stats with the Browns a couple of years back, but, he's been on practice squads left and right. And he's actually from what I've watched a good chunk of the St. Louis games that he plays for, they haven't really thrown to his side. And I think, a lot of these guys know that they have the talent or whatnot. This is a chance for them to showcase what they can do. But yeah, it will be interesting to see just how many jump over, because you saw it even after the AAF's collapse, but last spring, where you saw players jump on to the next level and at least get shots in training camp with NFL franchises. So there is definite talent here in the league, and guys like Garrett Dooley and Darius Hillary and PJ Walker, I think this will give them a chance to latch on to an NFL organization for training camp.
But let me jump in. Let me jump in real quick. I do think that is one thing that could be to the detriment of the XFL, though, depending on what the contracts or the length of the contracts is. Because one of those things that I know most fans like is familiarity. I suck at saying the word or whatever. If every season you have the players that you have getting picked up and drafted to the NFL, and every season is a rebuilding season, or every 2 years is a rebuilding season, I think it'd be very hard for their league to survive if all their best players are constantly getting plucked every 2 or 3 years.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree, though, because that's what you see in college now. Guys start 2 years and they move on. Here's the thing: if you lock guys down and say you can't go to the NFL, and before we get there, I'm not willing to say that there's guys that are going to come out of here and dominate the NFL. I'm sorry. Right now, the Canadian Football League is still a better breeding ground than this league is, for now. Okay? I'm not saying that that's going to be the case forever. But for now, I'm not expecting to see a ton of these guys playing on Sunday unless it's special teams or maybe in a backup role. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just not ready to do that yet. But if you lock guys down and say, well, you're not going to get – if the NFL comes calling, you can't leave our league, nobody's going to sign that contract. Nobody who thinks they're an NFL talent is going to sign that contract. And if you don't have NFL caliber players, fans, if I'm watching it now because I hope to see some of these guys play on Sunday in the fall. If you're telling me that they've got to stay for 3 years before they can do that, I don't know that I'd have as much interest. So I think they're just going to have to understand that until they have the money and the wherewithal and they can get to the level that the USFL was when it came to competing financially with the NFL, they're going to have to just be okay with the fact that guys that are good are going to leave. But,
I think what you said too, Scotty, when it comes to that too, I agree with you on that point. And it's also one thing where it's with the XFL, and I know it's been touted before, maybe some college players decide to forego, or maybe there's a standout player that, let's say he's a sophomore, and NFL rules, they have to be 3 years after their high school graduation, year to be part of the draft. Let's say, I'm not saying this is going to be a case in point, but hypothetically, what if Jonathan Taylor said after his sophomore year, I'm done. And then he goes and he can play in the XFL. He wasn't going to do that because that's, he wanted to stay at Wisconsin for 3 years before declaring. But Trevor Lawrence was, I know people tried throwing that name out in the past, for an example from Clemson, the quarterback there, where, it looks like he's proven that he's an NFL caliber quarterback or a professional quarterback. Well, instead of staying at Clemson and whatnot at the college level, if he's ready to move on, well, here's some professional players that he could, test his mettle with and
better
grow and develop.
Competition, make some money. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons for a guy in those after the sophomore year to absolutely consider the XFL as an option.
Right. So, I mean, that's one thing they need to consider. And maybe it does. The AAF had that. I don't know if it's ever going to be this way with the XFL, because I think the powers that be there want to compete against or set up an alternative to the NFL. But the AAF wanted down the road, from what it was reported, if I'm not mistaken, they wanted to kind of set up like a feeder system to the NFL where guys that were on practice squads or future contracts could have an opportunity to, maybe that could have been an option for them to get more work. It could have been like NFL Europe back when I used to watch 25, 30 years ago, and whatnot. But obviously that did not come to be. And I don't know if, the way that players can go to the NFL right now, I think it sort of sets it up like that, but it's not like a defined, designation of or allocation of, this team is just for these 5 4 NFC North teams, etc.
Well, and Jake, isn't it weird though that out of all the 4 major sports, so basketball has the developmental league, and they have Europe, and they have Indonesia, right? Baseball has a minor league system that's very defined. hockey has junior leagues and European leagues and minor leagues like the AHL. The NFL has none of that. So obviously it would be a great match made in heaven if they could ever do something like that. But for whatever reason, the NFL, because you're right, the AAL wanted to do that, and the NFL said no. Well, I don't understand why you'd say no. You could actually own the rights to these players, but for whatever reason, the NFL still thinks they're the big dog in the yard, and they don't want to work with anybody.
All right.
Yeah.
So going forward, and we already know the XFL is going to get renewed. They're going to have their second season. I believe that's already been signed. Do you think that next year should be a year of growth, or they should continue with the same size league they have going right now? And if they were to expand, where do you think? How many teams do you think they should add, and where would you like to see those teams come from or be based on?
I'll tell you. I'll just throw some out there, and Jake, you can tack on to this. San Diego. I'd love to see a team in San Diego, because they didn't deserve to lose the team they had. To be honest with you, San Antonio has shown that they could support football. I'd like to see one close. I'd love to see one in Madison. I don't know that would ever happen, but maybe Chicago, something close, so fans up here could. St. Louis is still a little bit long of a drive. Chicago, right. Not so much. But Birmingham, Alabama, because that's a huge football hotbed. I think those are 4 cities that come to mind right off the bat.
Yeah, I was thinking, I think they should at some point expand. If it's, the big thing is whatever. It's always going to be money talks. That's the big thing. If they can financially support it, and we know Vince McMahon's put so many millions upon millions into this company, and they have the right leadership structure from what it looks like. It's vast. It runs so much differently from the AAF in terms of looking to the future, and it's been shown with production through how they've organized things. I do feel in terms of Scott, you hit down San Diego. San Antonio was huge for the AAF. That was a lot of fun. Even Salt Lake, I thought had a decent I think it could be a good breeding ground for an organization there. But I remember, I joked about it on social media, but I would love to see a Milwaukee Crushers team, because I think that with the way it's set up with Wisconsin, we'll see. I don't know if Miller Park can actually hold a team, but the fact that it goes into the season, I don't know. I thought there was an article on JS Online years ago saying they could hold a football field there. I'm not sure. I need to check this again. I want to actually try to report upon this, because I think it'd be great.
I would check it, because I thought they thought that at one point, and in a way, like one of the outfield walls is configured would make it tough. It'd be cool if they could.
Right. But then you have the pro wrestling background, right, Scotty? Call them the Milwaukee Crushers. Go after, there's the statue now down in South Milwaukee. There's perfect there. You have the right logo. It's a keg of beer. It speaks to everyone there. And then, I think that, with Wisconsin, there's enough going on where, there's the Packers, there's the Badgers for football in the fall, but I think fans would be receptive. Would it be as much as they're the beloved Packers, or would they, depending on what if people are Badger fans or whatnot? I'm not sure how many they could get, but you're still seeing good attendance numbers at St. Louis, for that matter, and whatnot, and you're seeing Houston do well, for that matter as well in terms of attendance. So it's just one of those things where I think that would be big. I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else really, because they've kind of hit it everywhere. I'm trying to think if there's any. No, I think basically, you hit it on the head. I think 2 or 3 teams would be probably 2 teams to start in the next couple of years, and then try to build to see if that's successful, and then just slowly, because you don't want to expand so far and then have everything collapse on you because you tried to move too fast and you tried to grow too fast, and then you're leaving people out, and financially, and you're making it, you're in the red then. So I would go probably maybe in the next couple years, get a couple more teams and add on slowly but surely, do the right research. But I think they have cities and communities that want this type of football, around them.
I think a Toronto.
I agree with you, Jake. I was gonna say, Jake, that I agree with you. I don't think they should do it too fast, because they do it too fast, they could end up falling on their face. But maybe if they give it, I'll say at least 3 seasons, at least they should, before they add any more cities.
Yeah, I would like to
Just
see.
focus on what you got first.
Yeah, I agree with that. By the way, I heard that if they put a team in Jacksonville, it might be the first pro football team Jacksonville's had in a decade. So.
I don't really keep up with the whole fantasy side of professional sports, and I'm not sure if you guys are very familiar with it, but how has it?
Familiar with it.
Oh yeah, you're talking about one of the greatest fantasy football champions ever there in Scotty right there.
All right, so how has the XFL been performing for people in the fantasy leagues then? And are they happy with the way that it's been going?
Believe it or not, I'm in an XFL one league. So
are you now?
Yes. What we did though is we kind of bastardized the rules because there's only 8 teams. So generally, we've done an 8-man league, and we went with picking a quarterback, and then you could pick position players and start 3 of them. So basically, running backs, tight ends, and receivers are all in the same pool, just because there's not a ton of bench players you could have in a 10-team league or 8-team league. I mean, and then we have a kicker and a defense, and it's been fun. I mean, it does make it just like the NFL, guys. If you've never played fantasy football, if you're playing fantasy football in an NFL game and you happen to be scrolling through the channels and you happen to stumble across, a Cleveland Browns versus Carolina Panthers game, what reason do you have to care about that game? Oh, wait, my starting running back of my fantasy team's in that game. I have a reason to watch now. So I think that just builds a little bit of interest too, because there could be 2 XFL teams playing that you may not really care about, but now you care about him because, hey, I want this guy to do well because he's on my XFL fantasy team.
I think that's one big thing too when it comes to, you talk about fantasy football, Scott. I mean, gambling is big, obviously, and picks. I know the AAF had I thought they had some sort of technology for that and whatnot, but betting too, where there's something on the line with this. And if you can make, along with building the fans and the community and getting the support, like you had Oliver North, the XFL commissioner or the head of the XFL, help with that beer snake in DC today. So they're cultivating interest in social media experiences, and that'll lead to growth and in terms of interest there. But also if you have that kind of that primal type of interest where if it's fantasy, obviously you want to win something, there's something bigger there personally with choosing players like your own franchise. But on top of that, if there's betting, if there's actual money on the line too, there are ways, I'm sure they have stuff like that already set up, but there's ways that they're cultivating that experience, and it'll be interesting going forward, especially with just, I guess, how these offenses continue to develop and just how the teams score too. Because I think a big part of this with just interest overall, and maybe Scotty, you can speak to this in terms of the points that are scored or how things are tallied or whatnot. Some of the offenses have been, you mentioned it earlier, they've been really good. Whoever's got PJ Walker, I'm sure, is killing it right now in your fantasy league. But on the flip side, you have guys, Tampa Bay. Granted, they scored right now 27 points but also St. Louis has had some big points, but they only scored 6 yesterday. And so there's the inconsistency in terms of the offenses and the scoring too. Can also, maybe the inconsistency can hurt the product, and just in terms of just how things play out and people wanting to see more high octane offenses or more innovative looks.
Well, and it hurts on the gambling side, the straight betting side, because they push the point spreads a lot. But because of the weirdness with the extra points, you've seen a lot of teams just miss covering because they don't get a chance to kick the 1 point extra point. So I think the betting metrics is still being worked on in Vegas. The guys who are super smart with the numbers and are almost always right, and that's why they got rich, still haven't quite figured out how to handicap the XFL yet, just because of things like that, right? And you also mentioned Oliver North. I heard after he helped with that social media post, he sold some more arms to the Contras. So,
gosh, did I say the wrong name?
Wait,
no, Oliver Luck. Good golly, thank you. It's been a long day, guys. I've been up since thanks, brother. I appreciate you. No, it is Oliver Luck. I am sorry.
Right.
There you go. Good call. Thank you.
And then this may be one of the last questions, and this is about the NFL, but it could affect the XFL going forward. Where do you guys see this CBA vote, this collective bargaining agreement vote going? Do you see the players voting yes on this and we're going to have an 18-game season, or they're going to hold out until the contract is actually up for next year and look at the potential of a lockout?
I think I don't think it's going to affect the XFL, and I think they will ratify this. I think the rank and file will vote for it because they're the ones that are most impacted. I think the outspoken stars are saying the right things, and I think they should get a bigger cut than what they're going to get from the owners. But I just think when push comes to shove, the foot soldiers, so to speak, which make up 75% of the league, I just don't think they're prepared for a strike or a work stoppage. And I think we'll see a 17-game schedule. I've heard, though, that now the owners say if they don't ratify this, that they will push for an 18-game schedule if there ends up being a work stoppage. Right. So I think that's a little bit more of a carrot over their head saying, hey, you better ratify this because the next deal we offer you won't be as good. Again, I think of all the unions, I think the NFL Players Union is far weaker than what baseball and the NBA's union is. And I think the players usually end up on the short end of the stick every time there's a CBA. And I think it's going to happen again.
Right. The only reason I say it's going to affect the XFL is just because of how the XFL starts their season. So if they move to a 17-game season, that pushes the XFL back a week. If they want to continue to debut the week after the Super Bowl, and if they go to the 18th.
No, actually, it wouldn't. It wouldn't, though. They're talking about what they would do is if it's a 17-game schedule, they would start the season a week early in the NFL.
Okay.
Yeah, and if it's an 18-game season, they would skip the bye week before the Super Bowl. So they don't want to move the Super Bowl any later than where it's at. So I think they'd still be okay with all that.
Who wants 17 games, though? I guess that's my problem. I mean, I know the owners do with the money. I know the
owners do, yeah.
Yeah, the fourth. I just don't. I mean, 16 games just seems. Maybe it's just because we've been indoctrinated with it too much. Throughout my life and whatnot. That 16 games has been the standard, but I don't have any interest in seeing an extra game. And for that matter, I mean, if they bump it back earlier and Scotty, you know this better than I do since I don't cover the NFL as much anymore since I'm so knee deep in Badger stuff. But it's, in my opinion, like with that fourth preseason game, are they going to cut that all together then? Is that what the plan would be?
Yeah. There'd be only 3 preseason games, and it would start on Labor Day weekend. And I know that over the last 10 years, football has always started after Labor Day. But not too long ago, Jake, it used to start on Labor Day weekend. So, it's not unheard of for the NFL to play on Labor Day weekend. It just hasn't happened in probably 10 or 15 years. But it used to be a thing. Right. So there'd only be 3 preseason games, and that's where the fans will buy in. Because I don't necessarily need to see 17 regular season games, but I'd rather see a regular season game than a 4th preseason game. Although, I do want the players to be healthy. And I'll tell you this. Here's what I'd like to see, Jake, and everybody else about the NFL schedule. I would love to see either you do away with Thursday games or you do this. This is my plan for Thursday games. You play on opening week, right?
Right.
And then you don't start playing Thursday games till week 5. And the only people that can play in Thursday games are both teams coming off a bye week. Because 3 days rest between games in a league where they preach safety is just total hypocrisy. How could you care about players' safety and then have them play on 3 days rest?
Right. No, I agree with you there. I guess the one thing too I guess maybe it's just from the college football standpoint. I like it that the NFL has that week. They wait until the week after college football started, because I think it's fun to see the college game get a lot of the notoriety. They have their kickoff classics. They usually have like that first weekend, the big non-conference matchups set up. I know Wisconsin takes on, for that matter, a conference foe for the first time. I forgot since how long. I think it's the 60s. But it comes to the point where, I kind of like that Labor Day weekend being college football, and then the week after there, because it showcases that level of football, and then you go in, and then you get going, and you get in, then you get into the professional game the week after. So from that vantage point, I like it.
But remember, though, the college games wouldn't play on Sunday anyway. anyway. So I mean, it still
Oh,
doesn't
some of them
necessarily
do.
have to take away from that. And well,
Yes.
and
Well,
here's
some of
the
them
other thing
for that week.
Remember,
For that week, I mind you. Not.
okay, and remember this. No, if I think the players' union in the NFL gets screwed and treated like cheap labor, there's no cheaper labor than what the college football players have to deal with in a billion-dollar sport. But they could get put on probation and lose their eligibility because somebody buys them a friggin' sandwich. So yeah, I don't even want to go down that road.
No,
I
agree there. I agree there.
All right. Well, that's been our Week 5 review of the XFL. I'm pretty sure we'll be back for the season finale, or should I say the championship game, discussing the team.
Hey, can I ask you guys a question that has nothing to do with the XFL? So I watched Elimination Chamber, right?
Why?
And I'm just going to give hang on. I'm going to give a general, because I know the people who hate the WWE hate them blindly sometimes. I'm very neutral because I enjoy all the wrestling that's out there for what it is. But this was another case. The pay-per-view before the main event was pretty good. The tag team elimination match, chamber match, was good. I really liked the opener of Daniel. Oh, what a great opener, right? There was some really good things on that pay-per-view. There were some things that were but it seems that they can't get out of their own way when it comes to booking main events. And obviously, what do people walk away talking about? The main event, the last thing you saw. And this was, I think, another example of a main event that I just don't understand why it was booked the way it was booked. But
funny,
anyway.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up when we just had the natural Chris Black pop his head into the chat. So I'll let him explain that main event.
What's up, everybody?
Hi, Chris. Long time no see, buddy.
What's going on, brother? I hated the main event, and I'm probably the biggest Shayna Baszler fan amongst the three of us. But that was terrible. She was not able to show what she could do. I said on our last podcast that I feel like Shayna Baszler has lost something since she's been on the main roster. She's missing something. And I think Vince has lost confidence in her because otherwise she should have been able to display a better showing than that.
She didn't display really any brutality. She went in there, basically did a Brock Lesnar match. Instead of doing suplexes, she did whatever the hell her little shoulder drop is, her knee, and then choking somebody out.
Well, she was kind of brutal with Liv, though, a little bit.
All that really between pods open, that killed the momentum of the match. If they were going to do that with Shayna Baszler, she should have been the last one out.
All right, here's my 2 cents on that. I thought the tension that they built when Shayna Baszler was the only person in the ring and the other 2 girls were in the pods was great. I thought when Liv came out and she got destroyed and she's waiting on Asuka, I thought that tension was great. And then after that, I was like, oh, it went all the way downhill. They wanted them to look Shayna like a beast. It didn't come off properly. Then maybe the order was wrong. Maybe it was the talent that was in the match that was wrong. But something was off with the whole thing. They could have did so much better than that. Then when Asuka finally got in, it was over a minute and a half later.
Yeah, and the thing about this, and I'm old school, guys, and I know that I'm the old man in the room right now, but the problem when you book monsters like this, so you're going to have the blow-off is going to be at WrestleMania, and the way I'm guessing it's going to be booked is Becky Lynch beats Baszler. Now, my question is, who else now is credible to challenge Becky Lynch? Because Baszler destroyed everybody else that would be next in line for a title shot.
It'd be Ronda Rousey.
That's my problem with that kind of
It'd be Ronda Rousey rising from the dead. But we'll table this discussion. This will be on the next podcast for everybody. So make sure you guys subscribe to the Saturday Night Slamcasters wherever you get your podcast from. That's going to be dropping for you guys on March 14th. Scott, Jake, you guys want to give out your social medias and where people can find you and enjoy your content?
Yeah. I'll go first because I'm unimportant. You can find me at Scott Wisniewski 2 on Twitter. and I promise to respond, even though I don't do much on Twitter anymore. But I'm there, and of course you can find me on Facebook as Scott L. Wisniewski, because that other Scott Wisniewski is a freaking nut, and he's not me. I swear to God, it's not me. That guy is a freaking nut job, and I think it's cost me some actual media bookings. So Scott L. as in Leonard Wisniewski. I'm on Facebook. Find me there.
Yeah, and then you can find me on Twitter at Jake Coco, Koco. And then, of course, on Facebook, you can actually, like, if you guys follow I started the Wisconsin site for Sports Illustrated just a couple months ago. Just look Wisconsin Badgers on Sports Illustrated, like that, and we got tons of content coming up with March Madness, Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament, spring ball. I'll be at NFL Pro Day on Wednesday too, so we got a lot of coverage coming up, and the NFL draft just under 2 months away too.
All right, and then Xavier Mustafa, natural.
Wait, hang on. I got one other place you can find us. If you go back and listen to old episodes of the Kielbasa Kings, don't do it like I do. Like, I sit with the lights out and eat ice cream and cry because of all the good memories. But listen to some of that stuff because it's really, really good.
Yeah, I know. I got to try to get my act, now that I'm running the site now, I got to try to get my act together, brother, and try to get things rolling on that. So, but yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. I know we've trailed off recently, but let me try to figure out my schedule too. We can try to get some stuff going up and make sure that other Scott Wisniewski doesn't cost any more bookings, brother.
It was funny.
Yeah,
I did go back and listen to some of those after our last show that we did with Scott, and I did enjoy though.
They're good.
Mostly Scott just yelling Scott's just sighing at me for rambling for about 25 minutes at a time. So Scott's like, get this guy off, get off.
Oh, you could hear my sighs. Oh my.
Oh no, I could hear your sighs. I think the first 3 or 6 months of it, it's like I'd be going on, and all of a sudden I hear I'm like, yep, okay, I'm going too long. Let's cut it out. All right, and whatnot. But now, brother, we'll be in touch for that. And guys, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate y'all, making time tonight and letting me talk some XFL and some Badgers.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely be having you back on at least 2 more times, at least, because we're going to talk about when we head off into the playoffs for the XFL and after the championship game and where we see the XFL going from there. Xavier Mustafa, Chris Black, you guys got any church announcements? You give out your social medias.
Well, you guys can catch me at Xavier Mustafa on Facebook and on Twitter. Legacy Pro will be returning on April 10th to the Root River Center. Tickets will be available at legacyprowi.com, or you can get it off of Facebook, facebook.com/legacyprowi.
And Chris Black will be there showing off his brand new shiny vagina.
Paid in full. You can find me at The Natural Chris Black on Facebook and on Instagram, and at _natural_CB on Twitter. And I ain't got nothing.
And you can find me at Slamcaster TE78 on Twitter. And you can find us wherever you get your podcast from. Just search Saturday Night Slamcasters or hashtag Come Get Slammed. And obviously you're here on YouTube and you found us, so make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so that you get all of our notifications whenever we upload a new video. And if you're so kind, leave us a like and a comment, and we will get back to you. Other than that, like I said, the next podcast official episode is going to be dropping on March 14th, 2020, and that's where we're going to be discussing in depth the Elimination Chamber, talking about Raw, SmackDown, AEW, NWA, all of that good stuff. They got the Circle Square that's returning this week, I believe. So, yeah, stay tuned. Keep coming back. Keep sharing our content. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Scott, for coming through. And we will holler at all of you guys next time. Peace. Come get slammed.